Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of sinister tones, looking at stuff that's just a little kind of spooky or eerie for this spooky holiday season, month. It's October, man. Let's look at scary stuff. We're going to be checking out something from Sunn called It Took the Night to Believe. This comes off of their album Black One. Let's dive in, see what they're bringing to the table today. Definitely heavy and tense so far. I mean, the low end guitar, I think that's a bass, but it could also be an electric guitar. Massive tone, tons of fuzz, taking up so much space, but even the higher guitar is like a buzzsaw with those 16th notes, just constantly going, higher pitch, lots of white noise. Yeah. Yeah, the chanting also adds to the creepiness of this. You know, it just dawned on me. This is what Sunn does. I don't think we're going to get much more than this. That's definitely a bass guitar. I do like how it's giving us some variation. Its riff doesn't change much, but it does have fluctuations in idea. High-end crackle over here. had a little touch of something new with that feedback. All right. Funny enough, much like King Crimson's track Red yesterday, I feel like this sort of the novelty of it outlasts its interest point. Overstays its welcome a little bit is what I'm saying, where I get what they're doing. I think from an artistic perspective, solid idea, but subjectively, I was kind of over it about halfway through. So interesting that 100% of the tracks so far this week for Sinister Week have been a single atmosphere that to me is just, it needed some more meat on it, some new ideas, just something to expand on the general concept they're doing in order to make it still interesting towards the end of the track, or maybe even as interesting as it is at the beginning of the track. With that said, though, this does a fantastic job at selling the atmosphere that it's trying to. It does sound eerie. Maybe a bit more spooky than sinister, but I think that's all going to be a subjective taste thing there. And maybe even to an extent, a level of extremity, though I do find an element of campiness to this that kind of removes that sinister extremism for a bit of that spookier element. But again, more subjective ideas there. It does create something, though, that is eerie. It is foreboding. It is off-putting. There's a lot of parts to this song that tell me I probably shouldn't be here and that I should turn around and head back the other way. I mean, right off the bat, we have two guitars, a bass guitar and an electric guitar, and they sell this tone fantastically. We really only have these two ideas with very minimal chordal work between them. We have a series of dyads, and it immediately tells this, it creates this atmosphere of eeriness, of unsettlingness, tension, anxiety. Some of that is the size of the instruments. That bass is massive, taking up so much space, but also the buzzsaw, hyper compression, tons of white noise and grit on the guitar with that 16th note picking sells that as well. It sounds sharp and dangerous. Unfortunately, though, that is the whole song there. Just those two guitars. We don't have any percussion. We do have some white noise that appears over here from time to time. To me, it sounds like a guitar starting to play and then just kind of getting some crackle out of that. We do have some feedback that appeared for a brief moment, but just little one-off ideas. We don't have percussion. We don't have melodic vocal work. It's just these two instruments crafting this low fidelity atmosphere. And it works. I don't think the song needs anything else from an artistic perspective. What it sets out to do, it does well. But it really requires a high buy-in on the fairly minimalistic idea in order to enjoy it for the full 6 minutes. That kind of brings me back to the first point I made in this video. However, the other part of this is the vocals, and I think this is integral to this song working at all. The raspy, semi-growly spoken word stuff sounds ritualistic. I can't hear what's being said. There's the obfuscation of the compression and the production that makes it kind of difficult to discern words, but it could also not be in English too. There's always that component. But it brings a ritualistic sound to it. It feels like a type of chanting over this eerie music. I think that works a lot better than singing over it. And I think it's interesting also that in the two cases we've had so far, we haven't had singing. And I'm not saying that singing isn't good for a sinister tone, but not having vocals at all, like yesterday's King Crimson, certainly helped. I can't imagine that King Crimson's vocals, their style, would have elevated the sinisterness of that track. I do think it would have dulled it a little bit. And the same goes true for this one as well. Maybe harsh vocals would have worked, but I can't see where traditional singing on this song would have elevated the eeriness of it. Not without moving into, and see, this is interesting too, not about this song in particular, but a little hypothesis for this week. I think we are going to have a lot of harsh vocals if we have vocals at all. Because for clean vocals to pull off eerie, they really need to be raw, non-traditionally clean vocals. We can't have pitch perfect sounds. It kind of has to have some pitch imperfections to it. And it has to be very, well, I say has to as if this is like a hard rule, but I would expect it to be a bit more off-putting. Something a little less, more eclectic in the realm of vocal production. Think Nina Hagen or I can't think of the other person. Diamandis? I'm gonna have to look that up real quick. But the interesting vocalizations and non-traditional singing styles, deliveries, and timbres of voice are really going to help elevate atmospheres like this, where if you bring in a very traditional practiced type of vocals, I think it's going to clean things up and make it too familiar and reduce that eeriness. I'd love to be proven wrong though, because eerie music with great vocals sounds cool, right up my alley. I'd love to hear that, but I do think it would diminish the eeriness a little bit. So the chanting works really well here, but there's also the other element to this, which is the screams off to the side, which just sell the atmosphere. They don't do anything for the song musically, but it definitely adds to that ritual element. There is pain, there is suffering going on here. It adds to the world building of the song, if you will, and sets the scene for everything that's going on in it. But from a musical standpoint, there really isn't a lot to dive into. There's the dyads from the guitars, and that's it. Everything else is set dressing. It's setting the mood, the atmosphere, the tone of everything. And it works at creating this chanting, this ritual, this vibe. But I feel like my job here of dissecting the music is done. There's not much to dig into. Let me hit some lyrics and then we're going to wrap this one up. Usually when I bring up the term rule of cool, I'm usually describing riff writing, melodies in general. When you think of a riff that just sounds awesome, it doesn't really tell a story, doesn't do anything artsy or progressive, but dude, it sounds sick and it gets you pumped up. It's just cool. I don't usually use rule of cool for lyrics too often. But there is one line in here that just exudes the right kind of energy for this while creating a very vivid image. It's the only repeated phrase in here that comes in quite rapidly. In fact, at the end of the track, it's every other line. It says, "Cry yourself to ash." Not cry yourself to death, not cry until you're old. Cry yourself to ash. It's certainly in that same vein of the last two phrases I had mentioned, but says something completely different to me. It has an air to it. It's a little campy, a little over the top, very dramatic, but it works. Now, the reason I bring this up first, rather than diving into an understanding of the lyrics, is because I don't have an understanding of the lyrics. There's only a few stanzas in here. It's metaphorical. It feels ritualistic too, especially with the chanting that we eventually see towards the end of this, the song, with a constant back and forth between just a couple of lines. It says, perverted within a viewing. Standing alone, it took the night to believe. The beacon lingers, come to grasp. These lines, several of them, will show up again towards the end of the track. Cry yourself to ash, a perfect silhouette. The beacon lingers. The beacon lingers. Cry yourself to ash, a perfect silhouette. It took the night to believe. Taking these lines from the first stanza and interweaving them with this new mantra that's repeated over and over, and creating this fluctuating flow between these lines. They make less sense to me here than they do in the opening stanza, and they didn't really make a lot of sense to me then either, but they're devoid of that original context. The perfect silhouette actually comes from stanza 3. It starts off the stanza followed by, what is destroyed by fire, the withering egg, dilates full, unnourished, in salutations of crescent eye. The withering egg could be an idea, a concept. It doesn't necessarily need to be a literal egg, but something that's about to be. Maybe it is what was destroyed by the fire, but all of this happens. The egg is unnourished in the salutations of crescent eye. To me, this speaks of nightfall, especially since the song is called It Took the Night to Believe, but a crescent moon could look like a crescent eye. In the salutations of is a kind of strange way, but I could understand it to be in the presence of, being acquainted with the moon. This is all just a fancy way of saying this happens at night. Then we get to the cry yourself to ash area where we're pulling lines from previously and interweaving them in. And then we have a repetition at the end of vibrate, believe, defile. We hear those 3 words over and over. I don't know what all this means, man. There's some sort of ritual going on here, and there's an egg, and it's not doing too well. It's withering and unnourished. This all happens at night, but for whatever reason, our narrator begins to believe something because of all of this going on, and I don't know. I think the esoteric element of it, the metaphorical nature, the disconnection from line to line, a thin thread that seems to tie everything together, but doesn't quite give me the answer to things, just adds to the mysterious elements of all of this. As if I'm walking in on something, like I mentioned, I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here, but I'm also missing the context for all of this. I just see this ritual happening. I don't know what it's for. I don't know what it's doing. I don't really know what's being said. I have no context for any of this, but I do know it feels unsettling. And I think this song does a fantastic job of creating that feeling of just stumbling upon all of this. And I think having just as much, if not more, set dressing to the song than traditional musical components adds to that sort of, I don't know, in a sense, found footage audio style thing going on here, which I had never thought of before. Found footage is such a standard in video genre, especially in the horror genre of filmmaking. We don't really have, I've mentioned this idea of like stumbling upon a cassette tape in a forest and playing it, seeing what's on it, but I've never really used that word, found audio. Is that a thing? I don't know. I feel like there's probably an underground sub genre of music like this, probably in the noisier black metal, rawer side of metal, where music is created intentionally from the perspective of, what if someone just found this otherworldly low quality stuff on a cassette tape somewhere? This is the kind of music I'd expect to find in that sort of setting. But these are just my thoughts on Sunn's It Took the Night to Believe. Also, let me know if I'm saying that right. It just dawned on me. I was like, I think I remember someone told me not to pronounce the O at the end of it. But I want to call him Sunn O. There's an O there. But I think they're just called Sunn. It Took the Night to Believe. What are your thoughts? Did you enjoy this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own take, opinion, or perspective on this. Please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comments below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.